The Gupta brothers had a vast network of influence within the government that went right to the top. We're talking about 9 years of alleged corruption, money laundering, and fraud.
My name is Branko, surname is too difficult. I'm the editor of Daily Maverick. If not us, then who? We can sit on the side and complain, or we can do something.
If the session after this is succession, this one is corruption. And you will be probably about as excited as me to get the chance to hear from Branko Brkic. Have I got the...
I'm very well.
You know, a lot of people were watching the coronation here. I took the weekend off to work on that. Branko, my name's James Harding. I'm the editor of Tortoise. And when I thought about leaving the BBC, one of the inspirations was Branko and the work of the Daily Maverick, which exposed, I think probably the biggest single corruption story of my lifetime, brought me to an idea that I'd never even heard before in terms of state capture. And we got a hint of it there, Branko. Will you just start by giving people a sense of the scale of the Gupta's corruption?
Okay, not to go into details, the Gupta brothers arrived in 1994 to South Africa, and they went on to corrupt many people in South African government. They were corruptors of equal, what is the word?
Opportunity.
Opportunity, yeah. So they actually took a bet at some stage to a struggling politician called Jacob Zuma, who then went on to become president of South Africa. And since 2009, they managed to kind of preside over the system, which is probably the best ever executed state capture that we have ever seen. In terms of scale, just to give you an idea, what we could measure, and again, what we could measure, there's plenty of things we probably will never know. We're talking about $3.5 billion that was taken out of South Africa.
300 billion?
$3.5 billion, which for South Africa, I promise you, it's a mortal blow, And fortunately, they're still free, and it looks like they're going to be free forever.
And just explain, the government nonetheless appointed Raymond Zondo, the Zondo Commission,
Yes.
to look into it.
Yes.
It looked then that the Daily Maverick's work was going somewhere, that actually something fundamental would be achieved in South Africa. Do you feel as though it has been achieved?
Yes and no. We know the truth. I think it's really important. In terms of the actual result in the real world, let me just take you through. So I received the original hard drive early April 2017. By 1st of June, we started publishing more than 80 exposés, which really proven beyond any doubt what was going on. And by end of August 2017, Gupta brothers disappeared. Okay. By the end of 2017, at the ANC conference, Jacob Zuma lost power. In February 2018, he resigned. So we got a new president, Cyril Ramaphosa, and there was a really great level of energy and optimism, except that the years of Zuma wounded the country so badly, wounded the state so badly that Ramaphosa walked into a seriously corrupt, state machinery. Then what we've done, we helped create a Zondo Commission, which was in the front of live TV, list all the stuff that went wrong with it, and with the Guptas and other people. Unfortunately, after many years, Zondo came up with a really, really big findings of 5,000 or 6,000 pages. It's a horrifying reading, I promise you.
Yeah, and I guess that's the question, Branko. When you read through it, and I've only read sort of the executive summaries and the reporting, but you can't believe that it hits South African Airways and it hits newspapers and transport companies and
Everything.
I suppose the question I've got is, where are we now? How much do you think that corruption is endemic in the ANC, endemic in large organizations? We've seen the Eskom scandal recently, the energy company. How much do you think that South Africa has a corruption problem that just goes way, way beyond the Guptas?
South Africa has a corruption problem, but even the biggest problem is the ANC. ANC has a corruption problem. Unfortunately, 30 years later, it's not the same party that brought liberation and Rainbow Nation, through Mandela's incredible statesmanship. The ANC of today is a corrupt party, and a badly corrupt party where everybody is, fortunately, hiding some, skeletons. And it is, unfortunately, beyond salvation. So,
and just tell us, Branko, a bit about journalism in that context. I imagine you took on the Guptas, you took on Bell Pottinger, you've taken on the ANC. How much of the time have you thought that the Daily Maverick itself is in danger of being closed down, run out of town?
Well, throughout all these years, there were different types of threats. The biggest threat was closing down because we would run out of money. Our business model to start with was triple F, friends, family, and fools. We ran out of them, and then as we grew, our friends, family, and assorted fools ran out of, they just couldn't support us anymore. So we had to come up with new business models, but at the same time, the situation in the country and the situation in South African media, which is unfortunately weakening by the day, necessitated our growth. So we had to grow beyond reason. So we grew to 120 people of today, amongst other things, because we really need to save the talent from leaving the journalism.
And just talk for a second about the business model of the Daily Maverick, because we were talking before we came in here. I think this is the only session of the day where we're talking about journalism south of the equator, journalist organisation south of the equator.
I'm the one.
And there was a session earlier on about business models.
Yeah.
It's all very well thinking about subscriptions or advertising. What do you do in a marketplace where the majority of people can't or won't pay for journalism?
I would very much love being in a space that can afford the journalism. Unfortunately, South Africa is a poor country. Our official unemployment rate is 37%. Real unemployment rate is probably much, much higher. More than 30 million of South Africans depend on monthly grants just to survive. So they cannot afford journalism because first they need to afford bread. And the thing is that what we are in a situation right now where if they have to pay for our journalism and truth, they won't be able to afford it. So, our kind of dilemma is that shall we chase the profits or shall we chase the actual service to the community, service to South Africa? We chose the service to South Africa, but we were really, really lucky to manage to get this buy-in from a lot of people who can afford in order for us to keep the service for free.
And, when we first spoke, or one of the first times we spoke, you talked about different kinds of storytelling. And then I remember actually we ran into each other in Davos, which is, not known for its innovations. But there you were, I remember, showing me on a video a totally different kind of storytelling about a subject, climate, which, I know is kind of close to your heart and the work of the Daily Maverick. And it struck me that it's actually part of what we learned from Harry was that thing, which is, let's focus on different kinds of stories. I wonder whether or not we could just take a look at that video, because I think it tells us a little bit about, the way Harry inspired you.
Don't you understand what I'm trying to say? And can you feel the fears I'm feeling today? When the threshold is crossed It's the end of the game. There'll be nothing to save when the world is aflame. Take a look around you, girl. It's bound to scare you, boy. And then tell me over and over and over again, my friend, I don't believe we're on the eve of destruction.
We're on the eve of destruction. You can see the whole film. I have to confess, when I watched it, I was in tears, wasn't I? Embarrassingly in that all in Davos. What are you trying to do there? Some people would say that doesn't look like journalism to me. Why is it journalism to you?
Okay, so this is a 3.5-minute video, and I argue that this is an article, let's call it article, which is more powerful than 3,500 stories. Because we have people that we can convince there's a climate crisis, we should and could do something about it. And there's a massive chunk of global population that either think it's a conspiracy, some of them are violent, or either think that they can't do anything about it. They shut themselves off. And we have our Burning Planet, which is our climate crisis desk, is 10 people, and it's the biggest in Southern Hemisphere. We do a phenomenal job on that one. And yet, the only stories that are read are the stories with connection with corruption and climate crisis.
And Branko, just give us a sense of how you see what the Daily Maverick is doing within the context of African journalism overall.
It's a very difficult question. With all the troubles we have in South Africa right now, and again, we are unfortunately reduced to having 2 newsrooms, daily newsrooms of consequence, which is News 24 and us.
News 24 and Daily Maverick is basically...
Essentially, yeah. We are light years ahead of our colleagues in Africa. So I just want to warn everybody, please understand the next big crisis that is coming our way is African continent. And when this thing explodes, it will be too late to react.
And just to explain, what do you mean by that?
If you have a look at every country in Africa, it's under massive influence of China and Russia. It is structured as Russia. It's structured in such a way that there's an elite on top which doles out the sectors, and those sectors are controlled by the regional oligarchs, supported by all sorts of lieutenants from enablers from Europe, from Russia and China as well, from America. And there is no space for entrepreneurship. And there's even worse, there's no space for accountability. Because we are obsessed with the fact that people can actually go and place the vote. They can actually place, vote once in every 4 or 4 years, but there's no accountability about it. Mm-hmm. So we have a continent in which every number goes in the wrong direction, and where climate crisis is already showing, but is going to be much more dangerous than just about any other place. So what I'm trying to explain to people is that if you remember 2015 exodus from Syria, just by 2015 you're going to have a exodus which is going to dwarf it from Africa.
So I just want to finish, if I might. When I first came across the Daily Maverick, I remember being inspired by your sense of a purpose, defend truth. Yeah. And then I was fascinated by you. You understand by just telling us about that. You left, I think, the former Yugoslavia in 1991. Yeah. How did that experience, do you think, affect the way in which you saw your adopted country, South Africa?
I lost one country already, and I don't feel like losing another country. And we are very close to it, and I'm fighting.
Branko Brkic, ladies and gentlemen.